You're listening to a Comics XF podcast.
X-Men. Get it!
Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Battle of the Atom. This is your weekly X-Men podcast where we rank every X-Men story from A to Z.
And I'm Adam.
Zach, you see how I moved away from the mic there, Adam, so that you didn't have to do additional post-processing on that from all of the clipping. Because yes, I'm a kind gentleman.
You got a nice banshee cry, alarmed all of your family. That was great.
Can you hear the banshee scream? Can you hear the banshee scream?
Yes, we're doing a lot of banshee wailing this week because we're talking about Siren this week. Ew, ew.
I like Siren.
Siren's okay. It depends. Some stories are fun. Some are miserable. We're going to talk about both kinds this week.
I think it's sad that Banshee, both with Siren and with her dad, Sean Cassidy, aren't as good as the Broke His Helm metal song cry of the Banshee. But not a lot of things are.
What can be, right? You know, not everything rises.
Adam, I want to tell you something because listen, you know how I'm a hermit now?
I'm aware, yeah. Just like completely offline, off the grid.
Because I have bad habits, I did look on a website about X-Men because I was trying to kill time at work. And I was like, well, I'll find something. Great. And what I found, Adam, this is beautiful. Someone asking why Wolverine has multiple books, or is in multiple books, and Banshee is relegated to being in an Infinity comic. And I didn't... I like to think that I, at one point, was pretty tapped into the zeitgeist of what X-Men fans were thinking of.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about.
And folks, if you heard that sentence and didn't chuckle to yourself, just remember that Banshee's not that popular.
No, not even at his coolest. He's not that popular.
At his peak, at the most popular Banshee ever was. Mm-hmm. Banshee was kicked off of the team because Claremont was bored of writing him. Banshee left the X-Men before the X-Men got really good. Like that's.
I would argue that his coolest period was the Gen X era, but
coolest, yes, but highest readership.
Yeah, but even then, I mean, he's not going to ever appear in multiple books as a feature. People aren't going to be lining up at the LCS to pick up their Banshee books.
Banshee #1 is not going to come out. Like that's the truth. I would enjoy it, but it's just not going to happen. And unfortunately for Siren, a character that I enjoy and has been in better comics than Banshee, like just in quantity.
Sure.
Unfortunately for Siren, she is tied to Banshee and his level of popularity.
She doesn't have to be, unfortunately.
Yeah, but she wasn't in Giant Size X-Men #1.
No, that's true. That's true.
That is a hard thing to undo. Though oddly enough, Warpath also in the same predicament and got out of it unscathed. Yeah. So what do we make of this? I don't know.
I don't know, but why are we talking about Siren this week, Zach?
That's a great question. We're talking about her because Patreon supporter Noah went on over to patreon.com/Battle of the Atom, reached deep down into his hearts and pocketbooks, and tossed a couple of coins into our coffers so we could hear the Banshee scream their request of X-Force 31. And if you want to be like Noah, do that. Go to that website. Here's the thing about $5 a month. $5 a month is not that much money. In fact, I was talking to my mother about this earlier this weekend because she asked me, well, how do podcasts make money, Zach? And I said, well, that's a great question, Mom.
Why does everyone ask that? They're like, oh, you do a podcast. Does that make money? What? You know?
And the
moms
way that
want to know.
I like to say is more than most people who do podcasts, and we don't make that much money.
It's true. But we love what we do.
I was telling her that we could probably find ways to monetize the podcast better, but that would be effort. So what we have right now for you folks, if you want to help us monetize it so we can have awkward conversations with our mothers.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Frankly, we were driving back from the Ohio State game, so we were just trying to find something to talk about that wasn't going to make us incredibly depressed by just the horrible, horrible loss.
Sorry, buddy.
It's okay. If all of my hopes and dreams depended on if a college student did a good job running and throwing a ball, then I would be a very sad person. This way, I just had a really nice Saturday until I didn't. So,
yeah.
There was
and I bet those tickets cost more than $5, Zach.
They did cost more than $5. Luckily, my mom had a guy who got her some tickets through work. So it all worked out for everybody.
Nice.
And she quit that job literally the next day. So,
whoa, all right. Behind the scenes.
Beautiful situation about my mom's employment status. Anyway, I say all that to say at the $5 a month level, you can make a request of whatever you want us to cover. And then we're gonna chop and screw that request into an entire bespoke episode about what we want, what you want, and what we all need. I think, Adam, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
It is a synthesis of what we all need in these trying times.
Yeah, and I think what we need is X-Force 31, written by Fabian Nicieza and penciled by Tony Daniel. What is this story called? The cover says Black Tom Siren Legacies, but I think this story is called Cry Uncle. That's pretty
Which
funny.
is a better title, but I understand why Bob Harris said we're not putting that on the cover of a comic. One, because Black Tom is not her uncle, and two, because that would that's not going to move units in 1993.
No, but I'm guessing that they thought that the cover would, because the cover features Black Tom with his tree hands screaming with a cable eye in the background, while Siren's in the front screaming at nothing. It's quite a look.
It's interesting. So people who listen to this podcast know this, but people who may. Hey, if you just got into, let's say, X-Men during the Krakoa era and are like, 90s X-Force, that sounds like the worst. Well, you would be right for about a year. And then you would learn that Fabian Nicieza decides to just make it like a lot of a character piece. Like, there are a lot of quiet moments and issues that delve deep into each of these individuals on the team and their relationships with one another. And it becomes a really fascinating book that is so far removed from what Liefeld was doing that it's like, here's the thing. Do you like those sad Scott Lobdell issues of X-Men or of Uncanny X-Men, the one shots that he does where everyone's like, oh, this is a depressing like character thing?
Actually,
that's
I do.
This.
Yeah,
we do. Despite all reason, we do. This is that.
It is. Just to give readers context, this is an issue that is sandwiched in between the return of Adam X the Extreme in X-Force number 30.
A good comic.
Yep. And then right after this, we get into the not very good Child's Play crossover, so that Fabian can cross over with the New Warriors.
New Warriors is like Alpha Flight to me. People tell me it's good, and I will never read it.
I'm not touching that. But this,
I bet New Warriors is something I would enjoy. I'll just never read it.
I mean, given when it came out, I don't know. I find it hard to believe I'm going to get invested in those characters.
A lot of people really love the New Warriors, just like a lot of people love Alpha Flight. And I think I might be in the wrong on a lot of this, but it's not. I've accepted it's not happening.
I suspect thoroughly that I would enjoy reading New Warriors more than I would reading Alpha Flight, but I don't want to try either. That's just, But
Adam, you're talking about that like one of them's coke and one of them's heroin. You're like, well, I think I'd like this one better, but
I'm going to skip out on both. This issue is kind of interesting because not only is it one of these like, dramatic backstory things, but it also, for 90s readers who may not actually understand the backstory of Siren, it uses a conceit with a reporter, so that we can actually see the entire through line of Teresa's backstory in one issue, which
right.
I thought was interesting.
It is. Because what we got this guy, Kevin Donegan, who is talking to a bunch of people, partly because James Proudstar, Warpath, who we discussed earlier, has noticed that Siren, who he has a crush on, like
Oh,
he has fallen for her, and she doesn't necessarily feel the same way.
nope.
But Warpath is concerned because Siren's been drinking a lot recently.
Yes.
And he's concerned about his friend and what's happening with her. And we find out more and more that, hey, this is not a uncommon thing for Siren in her life.
No, it's very funny that this Donegan character is here because I don't know that Donegan, does this character ever show up again? Ever?
He shows up in one additional issue.
Okay, so he pops
which
up.
may be the issue right after this.
Yeah, pops up out of nowhere as if he's been hanging out for a year. He's unshaved, long blonde hair, cigarette, doing his best Kurt Cobain impression, I guess. But that's not a good comparison because he's Irish, but he's investigating the backstory, and we learn all about, for readers who didn't know, that Black Tom Cassidy raised Teresa as her child when Banshee essentially left to go work in MI6, whilst not realizing that his wife, who passed away, had given birth to a daughter, which seems completely unbelievable, but it's comics.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also working with the backstory that Claremont had already set up in another comic that we'll talk about or a bit later.
Yes. So Banshee, absentee dad, Black Tom also kind of absentee dad because he's a criminal. He is not there for Siren because Siren's a hero now and Black Tom is not. We get plainclothes Juggernaut in a bar. Always cracks me up when Juggernaut appears plainclothes, just like hanging around doing normal people stuff. I love
it. It's one of my favorite things in comics. And it's something that I would say certain movie portrayals of Juggernaut, meaning all of them, have gotten completely wrong.
Yes. Oh, always terrible. Most recently in Deadpool and Wolverine, but that's
a bad movie that we're not going to talk about anymore.
No, thank you. So we do get this confrontation between Black Tom and Siren at her mother's grave. Is that
her mom's grave? Yeah.
Yeah. And
because Black Tom was in love with Maeve Rourke,
yes.
But also maybe kind of in love with his cousin, Sean.
Yeah, we don't really get into that as much, but definitely seems like
there's a vibe
bad is happening.
There's a vibe there.
Yeah. Now, this concludes with Juggernaut. Well, Juggernaut helps basically set Black Tom up with this meeting at the end, only for Black Tom to be taken away so that he can be treated for his "I'm a tree now" problem.
Yeah, for tree disease that Black Tom has, that turning into a tree. So there's a lot of interesting things that are going on here. You get a parallel between Warpath's relationship with Siren and his concern for her. And Juggernaut's relationship with Black Tom and his concern for him.
Yep.
They are not written like best friends.
No.
Nope. They just aren't. There's actually, if you listen to the podcast Cerebo, there's a really good episode about Black Tom that dives into this specific issue a lot and some of the coding for the time that I just am not equipped to speak on. So I'd encourage you to go listen to that if you're interested in this issue. But I'd say it's a really, really smart job by Nicieza to give us those two parallel stories so that readers can draw their own inferences Like, he's not being subtle is the thing. He's being 1994 Marvel standard subtle,
Yes.
but he's being Mystique and Destiny level subtle on some
Yeah.
of this stuff. But like, at minimum, these are two men that care about each other a lot. Kane is seeing this person that he cares about go through a horrific event, that he's losing control of himself. He is losing like physical health. And the only way to get him the treatment that he needs is to send him to prison because they can't go to like a hospital or anything.
Yep.
Like,
And
it's friggin' rough for him. Like, there's
Yeah.
a lot of Juggernaut stuff here that is deeper than you get from the guy that, when he last appeared in this book, destroyed the World Trade Center.
Yes. And, Warpath is going through a similar thing because he wants to help Teresa, conquer her alcoholism, or deal with, deal with it. And Teresa does at least, pour her flask out on the grave and is like, I'm going to make an effort here at the end of the issue. The writing here, I think, is pretty solid. Where I think this issue has an issue is Tony Daniel. Tony
Daniel's a weird artist for this.
Tony Daniel is not, he's definitely trying to capture the Greg Capullo, X-Force era. There's a nod to some of the Siren pages that Capullo did. It doesn't quite tie together because Tony Daniel is kind of like already, this is 94, and we're
93.
already kind of in like second, third generation Jim Lee copycat time.
Right.
That quickly, and it can't really hold up what the story is trying to do.
Yeah, that's the challenge. Daniel is a talented artist, obviously. He's one that will go on to do a lot of really well-regarded stuff, but I don't think he is the right fit at this point in his career for a mostly quiet story about how Siren fell into alcoholism and how all of these men love this person that can't or won't love them back. This is
the kind of issue
it's also not the fit I'd probably give to Tony Daniel today either. Just to be clear, I'm not sure he's that like, I bet he's more capable of doing it now, but you don't expect Stan Lee to write War and Peace, like people have their own strengths.
Well, you mentioned Lobdell's sort of sad sack, uncanny, stories, and you could totally imagine like Andy Kubert being inked by Sienkiewicz doing this particular issue, and it having much more emotional weight to it. This feels a lot less serious because of how, I don't know what the right word is here. The art is not passing.
It looks like art that should. Yeah, it looks like the artist that you would put on X-Force, but these are not the stories that... These aren't the stories that they expected that artist to have to draw.
Yeah, I think that's
they
probably
expected
accurate.
Adam X the Extreme is back and things have never been deadlier.
Or Child's Play, which is probably a better fit, right?
In general, though, I think this is a good issue that does a lot to give Siren an identity in a place on the team and like a character that she can bounce off of from a relationship standpoint. I like it.
I like it. I don't love it. Let's try and rank it.
That's the thing. We do rank things on this podcast. We rank all the X-Men stories that have ever existed from best to worst. We are on the road, Adam. We're on that road again. The road to 1,000. That 1K road.
We are up to 975 stories, Zach. That is crazy.
Mile marker 975. Woo. We're right there.
We're getting close.
Best comic of all time from X-Men standards is The House of X Powers of 10. Love it or hate it. It's still the best one. 300 is Hellions 9 to 11 Funny Games. Number 600 is Uncanny X-Men Old Soldiers. That's with the Murder Grandpas. You know that. The 900, The Story of Phoenix End Song. And 975 is the worst X-Men comic of all time, 2099, World of Tomorrow. Hey, Adam, here's the thing. At number 400, we have X-Force -1. Another similarly quiet-ish story. I think this is better than that. I think this is in the top 400.
I do. At 381, we have X-Force 44, which is the first of the Purple Era stories.
This is better than that.
I think this is better than that as well. At 311 and 312, we have two late Jim Chung era X-Forces, which I also think this is probably better than those.
That's Road Trip and Armageddon Now. Man,
Yeah.
I forgot that we liked those so much.
But I don't think this is as good as the Burning Man issue at 263.
No, I don't think this is better than the Hellions Funny Games that's sitting at 300.
All right. So
we've got a block here.
Yep.
How do you feel about it compared to World War X from Ultimate Comics X-Men?
I think this has more character growth, and World War X has more big ideas.
Yeah, but what's better?
Oh, that's tough.
See, you just laid this out, because here's what I would say. I'm not sure. 307 gets me a little bit of pause. 310 is New Mutants 37, If I Should Die, which is the New Mutants dealing with the trauma from being in Secret Wars 2, as all of us have to deal with. I think that New Mutant story is more iconic, but this story is better structured and told than that New Mutants issue.
I think it's better written, and my cap here is probably 305, which is Old Man Laura from All New Wolverine. And at 306, we have from the 2019 run of Excalibur, the Malice Alice McAllister story. I would say
so
this
dumb.
I would say this is about on par with that. Like, this is probably a step above. I would put this at 306.
I say that lovingly. Calling Malice Alice McAllister is just
brilliant.
so dumb.
I love it. So comics.
You want to make this the new 306? I'm okay with that.
All right, great. That's a good starting point for Teresa Cassidy.
Well, no, that's not really the starting point for Teresa Cassidy, Adam.
That's
true.
The
starting point is.
See, I'm just serving up segues, you know?
We've been doing this for many moons.
Thwip, thwip.
Thwip, thwip. That's not the noise that Jessica Drew, the Spider Woman, makes.
Yeah, what do the venom stings make? What is their sound effect? It's like, meow, meow. I don't know. What is it, venom?
I don't know. Man.
That was great. I don't know what
Do you
that
think
was.
I'm a Spider Woman expert? I don't know. I don't know a whole heck of a lot about Spider Woman. I know that it's Jessica Drew.
Sure.
End of my knowledge, to be honest.
Listen, if you didn't know about Jessica Drew, then issue you might want to pick up is the first of two we're covering here. Spider-Woman Volume 1, 37 and 38. 37 has a multi-page introduction by Chris Claremont where, like, Jessica just babbles to Nick Fury after breaking into a helicarrier about who she is and what she's been up to for the last 30 issues.
Now, you may think, okay, that's interesting. Maybe Chris Claremont just got on the book and they figured that they should do a refresh. No, this is just a random issue.
Yeah.
This is just some issue.
So we have Chris Claremont writing these two issues. He's the writer of this book. Penciler Steve Leialoha with an army of inkers on this first issue, including Terry Austin, Bob Wyacek, Alan Weiss, Al Milgrom, Frank Springer, Steve Leialoha himself, and Walt Simonson. I believe that gets winnowed down in the second one down to Bob Wyacek, Danny Belanati, Bruce Patterson, and Alan Weiss. That is a lot of people working on these two issues.
Look, yes, it is. There's no excuse for this 1980. This is a 1980 Chris Claremont comic. Like, his star is rising at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because Spider-Woman, you know why Spider-Woman exists as a character, right, Adam?
I mean, I could take guesses, but I'm pretty sure it's about copyright.
Yeah, it's about copyright. It's about locking down that trademark. Same with She-Hulk. She-Hulk, I think, ends up being a better overall use of locking down copyright because She-Hulk leaned into the fact that that's really dumb. But Spider-Woman kind of floats around for a while as she is a superhero and she's tangentially a Spider-Man spin-off, but she has no connection or relationship or anything to Peter Parker, which means that she's kind of just a general hand in the Marvel Universe, which means I think her big problem is she doesn't really have an identity.
Well, she is a Dazzler type character in that you can put whatever kinds of villains you want up against her. It's villain of the week type stuff. And then when it's not that, it is, not unlike Peter Parker, but it's not that dissimilar from Dazzler either, where it's interpersonal, like, hey, I'm a young lady. These are my adventures when I'm not dressed up as a costumed hero. And it's going to be, a little romance comic-y kind of stuff.
I mean, look, there's a reason why this comic ends with like Innocenti writing this character out of existence. Like, you do know that this run of Spider-Woman ends at issue 50 with Jessica saying goodbye to the mortal world and walking off into the spirit realm.
Wow. No, I did not know that. That's wild.
On a comic with a photo cover. It's
amazing.
It's bizarre.
Okay. Truly
wild where this book goes. But until then, yeah, like you're spot on. This is what Dazzler was doing. This is almost interchangeable with Dazzler.
It's very similar. And because we have Claremont here, who is also writing Uncanny at the time, we're getting a lot of X content here. So our villains for these two issues are Black Tom, Juggernaut, and we get introduced to a new character who is Teresa Rourke, Siren. And then, of course, the classic Uncanny team with Kitty Pryde does show up as part of issue 38.
Very specifically, it is the post Dark Phoenix Saga X-Men who show up.
Yes.
Great. If you're going to have one team of X-Men show up, you might as well do the best one.
Well, it just so happens.
I'm just kidding. Angel's on this one. It's not the best one yet.
Oh, good punchline with Angel, though. We do get that, hey, well, here's somebody's phone number. Isn't that one of the... Oh, never mind. I'm going to cut this out. That's not from these issues. That is from the Marvel Holiday Special that is coming out this week.
Okay, here's the thing. Were you also... We can cut all this out or keep it in because that issue will already be out by the time we're talking about this. In fact, it will be Christmas related. But were you also sitting there trying to think through, wait, no, I know my continuity. I know what Kitty was doing that Christmas, and delighted to find out that Daniel Kibblesmith is also the exact kind of nerd that we are. It's like, no, I also know what Kitty was doing that Christmas. Thank you.
It was we're not covering it for our Christmas episode, but it was one of the more fun Christmas stories. Anyway, forget I said that. If you haven't read that issue, go check it out. Where do we go from here, Zach? What is Black Tom and Jugs and Siren up to here?
Wait, we didn't mention what Spider-Woman's deal was. We teased it. Y'all know that Spider-Woman was created from a spider by the High Evolutionary and then trained to be a Hydra agent until she realized that they were Nazis and she was like, I don't want to do that anymore. So she rebelled and now she is just a superhero.
The fact that her origin involves the High Evolutionary is really, really funny.
That has been retconned. Now, what Spider-Woman's current deal is, I couldn't tell you. Like, I honestly couldn't rightly tell you what her deal is.
I'm not worrying about it right this second.
Experiments. Yeah.
Yeah. What is really fun is that we have a good old fashioned heist plan from Black Tom, Juggernaut, and Siren. They are going to, what are they robbing here? The gold from, why can't I think of where it is? It's a famous, the San Francisco Mint. Yes. Oh no. And they're not robbing gold. I forgot. They're robbing gold. They're robbing vibranium.
Yes. They want to corner the market. No, they don't even want to corner the market. They just want to steal all of America's vibranium so that A, they could just sell it back to America.
Yep.
Or B, they could sell it back to literally anyone who's not America.
Yeah.
That's the extent of their good plan.
This is a excellent plan.
Honestly, not their worst one.
No. And so basically the way in which they're going to do this is Siren is going to use her powers to set off every other security alarm in the entire city so that the cops are so distracted that they will not notice that they are breaking into the San Francisco Mint through a wall in the subway. And I gotta say, pretty good plan.
Is it a good plan?
It's not a bad plan if you're a supervillain.
It's not the worst plan. They also have like a boat or a submarine that they're going to escape on, which is great.
Yes. Now, the interstitial story of this is basically that after Jessica Drew breaks into a helicarrier and has a random conversation with Nick Fury, she
literally just breaks in just to have a conversation.
Yeah, she comes
Love
back
this for her.
to the house that she is sharing with a roommate, only to find that they are throwing a housewarming party. So she has to. I did love this. It's such a funny sitcom setup where she has to keep jumping in and out of the party to go and do superhero stuff. I thought that was pretty fun.
Right. No, it's good. I like it. Unfortunately, the other thing that happens interstitially is that somebody is getting some notes on Cerebro that, oops, there is a mutant that I don't know about. I should probably find her.
Yes. And that mutant turns out to be Siren, and the X-Men show up at Jessica Drew's house and are basically like, hey, by the way, we know you're a superhero, so we're going to need you to leave this party and go help us figure out whatever's going on here. And when they get into the fight scenes with our villains, we actually see Siren demonstrate some versions of her powers that I don't think she ever tries again, including creating a Soundwave Pterodactyl, which allows her to mind control Angel for a few pages.
People later will soften this to be that she has some level of hypnotic influence on people, like sirens do in Greek myth.
Yeah, we see this in our third story today. We'll get there in a second.
But that's insane and silly. But whatever, it's a comic book. Do you know who's also insane and silly and shows up in this, Adam?
Who's that, Zach?
It's Lindsay McCabe. We all love Lindsay McCabe, right? All of us who have read the Wolverine and Madripoor stuff. Yes, we all love Lindsay McCabe.
Remind readers about Lindsay McCabe, aspiring actor Lindsay McCabe.
Aspiring actress Lindsay McCabe, who is Jessica's like BFF. Unfortunately, she does not get belligerently drunk in this, like she does in the Wolverine stories.
Yes.
What she does do is get the hots for Angel and Peter Rasputin.
Yes. That is a great line when he says, I am Piotr Rasputin. She goes, I bet you are.
Bet you are.
That's great.
Love it. Listen, I don't have a lot of great things to say about the Carla Pacheco Spider-Woman run that recently, I say recent, like 3 years ago, ended. But Carla Pacheco did bring back Lindsay McCabe, and that's kind of amazing.
Yeah. It's a fun character. And I also appreciate that, you know, there's a lot of sort of concern trolling by the other people at this party about Jessica. Like, oh, is Jessica okay? Where's she going? Oh, is she making out with that guy? Should we do something? And Lindsay McCabe on every one of these occasions is like, hey, she's an adult. She can make her own decisions. She's fine. And it's like, okay, let's give Jessica some room. You know, good job, Lindsay McCabe.
She's great. Unfortunately, Juggernaut and Black Tom being crime uncles who are making Siren do crimes, that's less great. But we get an interesting thing at the end. By the way, the X-Men team up with Spider-Woman after a small fight, and then they beat Juggernaut and Black Tom.
They Shocking. Do by throwing Colossus through their ship.
And that was an accident. He was not supposed to go through the ship.
He was not supposed to go through the ship. I also completely forgot until I read this again that Peter doesn't have to breathe in his steel form. And I read that and I was like, oh, okay. Completely forgot about that as part of his power set.
That's 100% a thing. It's just, it's like Nightcrawler being like, I can disappear into shadows because I have really, really dark blue skin and fur.
Yeah, so lots of fighting on the boat. They win.
They win. And in what I think is very interesting, because obviously I would bet Claremont had like his lore book on Black Tom and Sean's relationship, like already like penciled out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Has Black Tom say that this wasn't Sirens, this was all me and Juggernaut, and essentially gets her released into the X-Men's care to go introduce her to her father, Sean Cassidy. And then Jessica gets to become a private detective.
Yeah. Nice and sudden. They're like, oh, here's my office. My office is ready. I'm a PI.
This is an interesting story because, like, Siren's weird because she's obviously a character that Claremont liked and wanted to do something with, but just, like, never got around to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of his extended universe characters that just doesn't get enough love. And I think these two issues are fun. Leia Loa's art is just kind of okay, especially with the madcap group of inkers that's going on here. The art goes in and out from being, good to okay, of course, across the two issues. And, I don't think it's even the best Steve Leialoa art that's been made.
No.
It's just okay. But I would, from a writing standpoint, I really enjoyed these two issues.
I think it's 1980s Chris Claremont. There's a certain level of competency to the writing.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it compared to at 545 Dazzler 22-24 Sisterhood?
Boy, I don't know if it's better than that, but we're on par with. That's a good place to look. Is other Dazzler issues.
These are essentially Dazzler comics. 618 is Jail. This is probably better than Dazzler's Jail Fight, though Dazzler's Jail Fight does have Ken in it, her lawyer boyfriend.
Ken Barnett. Yes.
I love Ken. Jason Lowe, please bring Ken back. I know you don't have many issues, but can Ken be around?
He's got one issue left to reveal
Jason,
who is behind the plot against Dazzler. And I am
if it's Ken,
dying for it to be Ken Barnett.
It won't be Ken. Ken's a sweetheart. Ken's a good boy. Ken wouldn't. That's the thing. Ken wouldn't. And if it actually ends up being Ken, I'll be mad as #1 Ken superfan.
Oh my God. I think we're in the right spot. I want to compare this to another book that is similarly introducing a character, and that is the first appearance of Madrox the Multiple Man, Giant Size Fantastic Four #4 at 620.
This is better than that. And the reason why is that Claremont knows how to write comics now.
Yeah. So I think we're in between 618 and 626.
We're about there. Because I don't think this is... No, this isn't better than Adam X the Extreme is back and things have never been deadlier. That's at 610. So I would say you have Extraordinary X-Men #1 through 5 highlighted. This is better than that. It would be rude to say it's worse than that.
No, this is on par with Iceman Volume 3 #1 to 5, Thawing Out.
It's probably better than the Sentinels Are Alive and Well from Avengers 102 and 104.
Yeah.
But probably not as good as the first Gambit appearance.
No. So this can be our new 614 Spider-Woman Volume 1, numbers 37 and 38. And wouldn't you know it, we've got one more Siren story, and it's coming to us from Pad, Peter, Alan, David.
This is a late run X Factor Peter David story. This is from numbers 237 to 239. They're a series of loosely connected stories, I would say.
Yep.
Which is something that Pad was doing a lot in his later run on X Factor. I really do think the book has a big turning point after issue 50, which ends the Summer's Rebellion stuff and all of that, like really the first big chunk of the book, and then becomes aimless for 70 issues.
Yeah. So we have Neil Edwards and Carl Kessel on 237, and Paul Davidson is doing the art on 238 and 239. For our Siren back purposes, Wolverine is worried that there have been some deaths that seem to be attributed to a similar power set to Siren. So he is asking Havoc and Siren to investigate that. But before we do that,
Havoc's running the team right now, by the way.
Yes.
That's why Havoc's
before we get to that, we have 237, which is a road trip issue. That is how it's advertised, with Siren, Polaris, and Rain, that I really did not like, Zach.
I don't care for how Polaris is written in this. Polaris,
that's your major concern. Please continue.
So let's talk about a few things in this issue. One,
Okay.
This is an issue focusing on Peter Allen David's writing of women in X Factor. And
Ugh.
not to say that Peter David does not put literally every one of his characters through the ringer in this book, but the women get it the worst.
Yeah,
And
it's gross.
in ways that are really weird. And even here's the thing. So this issue centers around Rain and her guilt. Her guilt around two major things. One of which Peter David did, one of which he didn't, both of which involving Rain's mouth.
Please continue. Tell us
Whoa,
all
whoa.
about how Rain gave birth to Himhari's son through her mouth.
We know about this. We haven't covered this on the podcast because honestly, it's just that's just a bad arc where all of the dog-based characters are chasing
Yeah,
Rain. Sorry.
not excited to cover that.
I'm not excited to cover anything involving Tyr, Rain's son. Like, God bless Vita Ayala. They tried to pull it together, and that was just a plot that never materialized all the way through in their New Mutants run. And you know what? Fine. If that one got dropped, we're okay with it. But between that and then, as we know, Rain eating her dad after being on heroin.
Boy, oh boy.
In X-Force, which Peter David did not write. He
True.
inherited that plot point.
Yes. So we are opening X Factor 237 with a flash forward to a character we've already met previously and we've talked about on the show, which is a dupe of Madrox known as the Reverend John Maddox. And he is essentially handing Rain a flail and telling her to beat herself with it until she bleeds. And
now I want to be clear. About this.
Yes.
I like Reverend John Maddox in most stories.
You've spoken about enjoying that version of Madrox on this show before. I'm guessing that this isn't the version of the character you enjoy.
So here's the thing. What we find out, what he's really doing is he is making Rain he's not really making fun, but kind of pushing Rain to like accept that no, she doesn't need to punish herself and doesn't need to beat herself up over things that happen to her that aren't in her control. And she it's legitimately a healthy lesson to be taught. And it's just, this is the most bizarre way to go about it.
Okay. I was going to say, the moral that he is trying to, share,
his heart's in the right place,
is correct. The method by which he does this is really messed up and horrific, and I don't like it.
I don't like that. I'll tell you, I did not grow up Episcopalian. I grew up in a school that was non-denominationally Christian, so there were Episcopal folks that went there, and Episcopal pastors and reverends that I talked to and listened in sermons of while I was growing up. Ain't none of them had a cat o' nine tails, just at the ready.
Yeah, well, he claims that he confiscated this off of one of his congregants.
That's not how.
Sure.
Not how any of this works.
Yeah. Anyway,
that's not how churches work.
No. Before we
that's
ever
just not what they do.
Get to that point, Polaris and Siren do their best to try and cheer Rain up by taking her on a little road trip. They make the car fly with their powers. It's cute, I guess. I don't think it's really cute. I agree with you.
I don't think Pat has a good understanding of
Like what?
or a good
Maddie?
voice for Polaris.
No, I agree. I agree. Luckily, we don't spend that much time with them, and we get into the story that's more about Siren in the next 2 issues as
So, wait,
Havoc.
just to wrap up the Rain thing. Sorry, just to wrap it up. Rain decides that she should probably find the son that she vomited up.
Yes,
Uh,
she's gonna
she
go
said-
look for him.
because that is something she feels guilty about, but is something within her control to, like, that is within her control to change. So she would like to change that. She would like to do what she thinks will make right, which will be the next 30 issues of this book and just be maddeningly uninteresting.
Yeah. Hey, I was gonna jump into the Siren story, but can I just touch on 2 subplots that I found really
Touch
gross?
away. Touch
Let's-
away.
Yeah, I don't like that, the way we're talking about that. The first one is Guido doesn't have a soul anymore, and so he
Yeah.
like basically connives and like grand gestures his way into a date with Monet, which I didn't
Okay.
like.
Okay, but here's what I'll say about that.
Okay.
Even though he is a very strong guy,
Uh-huh.
there is not a power imbalance there. Like, Monet can walk away and leave.
Oh,
Like, 1, physically, and 2, emotionally, she is not going to be guilted into doing anything that she doesn't want to. Like, she is okay ripping somebody's heart out and making them feel bad. Like,
okay. You're not wrong. I'm not saying there's a power imbalance. I'm just saying that it seems forced. It does not seem natural that Monet St. Croix would be like, "Hey, great, let's go out on the town." You know,
I agree.
I
but
feel
I also
your pity
think that
party.
I think that is both intentional on one hand, and on the other hand, is not taking into account the context of, like, how Strong Guy lost his soul to begin with, which was, like, kind of partially making a big sacrifice for Monet, and some of the stuff around that. Like, I think in the context of this long run, that moment is earned. In the context of these 3 issues, not so much.
That one's less gross than the one that is continually gross is the relationship between Madrox and Layla, which it is not just implied, but it's outright said out loud that the 2 of them are having sex. And there is a like visual joke about her looking and smiling at him when he's not looking at her. And I'm just like, this is gross, guys. Just stop it. Just please stop. Like, I hate it so much.
I dislike it. I've also accepted that there's nothing to be done about this at this point, and that that's a weird thing you did. That was weird. It's weird how many ladies in this book have sex with Madrox.
Yeah.
Just
also weird that these are the 2 issues about the Morrigan.
that's the other thing. Okay, so the Banshee like person that has been killing people is actually the Morrigan. From Celtic myth.
Yes.
Or from, as more comics readers probably know her, from Wictive.
Yeah, I mean, more to X-Men fans' recent knowledge, they might remember Leah writing the Morrigan back into a Siren story in X Factor.
God bless Leah. Not the story I would have done. Love that for her. More bold than I.
Sure. And this is a real quick cameo though, because as soon as they figure out that there's a little kid that summoned her, that's where those sort of mesmerizing powers come into play here. She convinces this kid to write a Celtic rune on the floor, and out pops the Morrigan. And well, they basically beat the Morrigan in like an issue, so it's not exactly a long story.
It's not. It sets up that Teresa's going to be the new Morrigan in the future, which
Sure.
on one hand, so I think a lot about the end of X Factor, and on one hand, none of these characters were really doing anything until Peter David brought them into X Factor.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, Peter David breaks all of these characters before he leaves.
Yes.
Like, they are they are not usable without significant reworking by anybody after David's X Factor is done.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple Man is off the table. Rain, you could actually just throw into whatever, which they did. But like Strong Guy, you had to go through a whole lot to fix. You had to go through a whole lot to fix Darwin, and especially Teresa with the Morgan stuff. Like it's a big swing and a big change that isn't really additive in my mind. Like because comics live in a perpetual like second act. You have to be able to explain a character's deal in one text box.
Mm.
And if you have to say, she's the daughter of Banshee. Okay, got it. She has sonic scream powers. Got it. Also, she is possessed by the Morrigan, who we all know very well and definitely don't need a reminder on because it's one of the more popular things from mythology that we all know, right? Like, I'm not saying the Morrigan's not popular, but it's like it's not like saying Zeus.
No, it's definitely not something that would be super familiar with had Leah not reintroduced it and pointed me back to these stories when she did. So,
wait, Adam, have you not read all of X Factor? Like, just in a
Zach, I care about myself, so no.
So X Factor's like another Alpha Flight thing for you. I'll say, Adam, I forget if I said this on the podcast recently or not. That was rereading.
Yeah, that was your
X
COVID
Factor.
read.
It was the first thing I did during COVID. No, it was. This will tell you what I did. I did X Factor, and then I did all of Rick Remender's Uncanny X-Force, which was good, and Avengers, which was less good.
Yeah.
So I put myself through it.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Eminently readable.
$5. $5 make me read more Peter David X Factor, but other than that, it's not my thing.
Adam's gonna do it for $5, everybody. Like, yeah. I may subscribe to the Patreon just to make Adam live through Hell on Earth War.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I gotta admit, these 3 issues did absolutely nothing for me. I think that there is some just really grody vibes to these stories, and I don't like the artwork very much. It feels very stiff and not very engaging, and I certainly didn't want to read any more. I don't want to follow these characters on whatever it is they're doing, including Pip the Troll.
Pip the Troll was a bad addition. I don't think there's anyone who will defend that addition to the book. Jim Starlin weirdos will be like, I love Pip the Troll. And I'm like, come on, guys. I'll accept that you like Adam Warlock, even if I don't understand that. Pip the Troll? I don't. I love a weird little guy. I don't get Pip the Troll.
Yeah.
Regardless, what I'll say, to David's credit, across that entire run, it is playing with long form storytelling, which you and I love. Like, it is doing that Claremontian, it's going to take us 70 issues to tell this story. Like, he's doing that.
I'm not against that. I'm against the stories that he's telling.
He is playing with more casual, character-driven stories a lot of the time in a way that comics weren't doing then to the same level that they are now. Like, there's a lot of creators that you and I really like who are very influenced by David's writing on X Factor because it was a book that felt different, that had a different vibe and a different tone. And I think part of our reaction to it is looking back at it when we've seen the stuff that it influenced lap it, you know? Like
wouldn't take much. Really wouldn't.
Where do we want to rank this? Where do we want? I'm not defending this particular story. This one's not a good one.
Listen, I'm already down like low here. So like at 698 is the Daddy Boros issue.
It's worse than Daddy Boros. Daddy Boros is so freaking funny to me.
Now, I will say, I don't think this is as bad as it's 715 X Factor She-Hulk Secret Invasion. I remember
Man,
that.
why have we almost exclusively talked about the worst X Factor stories and not some of the decent ones?
I don't know that there are any. I mean,
There's plenty of decent ones. Adam,
listeners, show me these decent Peter David X Factor stories. I have yet to read them.
Adam, have you read the one about Trevor Fitzroy?
Oh, I do like
Adam,
Trevor Fitzroy.
Yeah, that's the thing. The best Trevor Fitzroy story is the cap of it. Now, you're not going to like it because there's some significant Layla content in there, and it's specifically the part where Layla grows up and gets sexy and they start making out.
All right, I'm out.
Also, there's a really good Fitzroy story at the same time.
All right, this is not as good as 707.
This is such a hard comic to talk about sometimes.
Yeah, it's a bad comic. This is not as good as it's 707. The New Mutants Return to Asgard.
Which one is X Factor 110 and one? Oh, that's
the one
Lila
where
Cheney.
Yeah, that's the one where Guido dies.
Yeah, it's about on par with that.
Yeah.
It's worse than X Factor or Alpha Flight 106, the one where North Star yells, "I'm gay."
Yes, I think it's better than Deadpool Max Volume 1, number 4. And I guess, I don't know. I think I'd rather look at the X-Men wedding album.
It's worse than the wedding album because that wedding album has that wedding dress in it that's really good.
Yeah, let's do that. All right, so this is our new 712 X Factor Volume 1, 237 to 239. Folks, we talked about Siren.
We did. I like Siren. You know what? If folks want to read like really good Siren comics, Valentine Smith wrote and drew a great Siren fan comic set in the Krakoa era that is truly one of my favorite like things that people that I have met have like done like in the fan sphere. It might be the best X-Men fan comic ever made. Like I'm not exaggerating when I say that. And I say that on the phone with you, Adam, a guy whose collected edition X-Men fan comic I wrote the intro to.
Listen, it's very good. And you know, we're Valentine Smith fans here. So
it's up there. If you like Bish and Jubes, you're going to love it. That's what I would say, folks. It is of Bish and Jubes quality.
Well, very different tone. It's much more in the Marvel Comics, like
but Adam, our entire 7 years, our bit has been very different tone. Doesn't matter. We're gonna rank them.
That's right. That is true. Yeah, I don't know if you can get that from Val's Valentine's store, but check it out. If you don't have it, get one.
Get one. It's great. What do you got going on, Adam? What are you doing?
Oh, geez. I guess given our recording calendar, getting ready for the holidays, folks.
It's the holiday season.
You can follow along on Blue Sky and Instagram at Adam Rec. And Zach, man, it looks like we're having our annual holiday episode next week, huh?
Next week is our Xmas special. We're so excited.
Yes.
Do we have big plans for it? No. Are we running out of Christmas stories? Yes. 7 years and a Great Lakes X-Men Christmas special later. We are running out. We're not out yet.
We're not out yet. Come on.
We're getting, at least with Halloween, you can just do Halloween vibe things. You can't do a Christmas vibe.
It's tough. It's tougher. Yeah. There's only so many of these.
But you know what? That's where we're at. And until then, folks, this has been Battle of the Atom. We hope you survived the experience.
Get it!